All right, hello, rockers, rollers, and heavy metal maniacs. It's the Meista from Brews and Tunes. Cheers. I am absolutely thrilled today. I am chatting with the one and only Tony Childs, guitarist of brand new kick-ass band Electric Temple, and of course, you probably know him from way back in the day with Shanghai. So, Tony, thank you so much for joining me today. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. It's a pleasure being on the show.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, thank you for being on. I'm really excited. Well, let's jump into it. So brand new album, brand new band, brand new album, Electric Temple, High Voltage Salvation. I got a copy right here. This just came out exactly 2 weeks ago today. And I gotta say, this is killer. I mean, you and I were chatting before the interview, and I think that the name of the album is very apropos, especially for me. Like this is exactly what I needed right now was this old school hard rock, heavy metal. I mean, yeah, it's definitely high voltage salvation. Yeah, it's like it's perfect. It's such a perfect album. Um, so yeah, I guess that wasn't really a question. That was just me gushing, but uh, but yeah, it's
Amen to that. That's the gist of it right there.
yeah,
You
cool.
nailed it. Okay, interview over.
Yeah, done. All done. Thank you and good night.
That's it.
There will be no
Elvis has
encore.
Elvis has left the building.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just like I said, I mean it just hits just so well. It's just and it keep me and I want more. Every time I listen to it, I'm like I hit restart. I'm like, I got to listen to that again. It's just, since I purchased it, I just cannot stop listening to this album. It is fantastic. So I guess the big question for me, like right off the bat, is, and admittedly, and I kind of feel guilty about this. This somehow flew under the radar for me. I did not know this was in process. I didn't know this band existed until I got the press kit from Brandvold, and I saw it and I read the description. I'm like, wait, who's in this band? And then I listened to it and was like, holy shit. So I guess my question is like, how did this come to be? How did this come into fruition? How did you put this together?
Yeah, so good question. Back early in the writing process, I was going through a rough period in my life. I had a lot of things that were happening around me to people who I loved. That was, there's some lot of dark things going on around me, and in my personal life as well. So there was a frame of mind where I really needed something to soothe my soul, and that's always been as a even as a youth, my young teens, when things got me down or life is hitting me in a bad way, you know, uh, rock and roll and metal was my salvation.
Nice.
And so, being a huge uh, Sabbath and Dio fan, and of the years of the Dio and Sabbath years, that was so important to me in my youth, that I wanted to have that feeling again, that excitement that I got back then musically. I had been doing film and television work, and I had strayed away from, getting into the really heavy guitars and really cool rhythms, that metal, gave to me that feeling of empowerment.
Okay.
And so I needed something. It was a cathartic process of writing this album. It helped me deal with all these things that were going on in my life. And when I started working with Matt Starr from Ace Frehley and Mr. Big, it just took on a whole new life. And I had just to keep going. And it was something that was purely just for myself. And then we started going, man, we got to do an album like this. And I started writing the melodies, and had some vocalists come on and sing some of the stuff, and it was taking shape. Mike Duda, who was a friend of mine, we grew up together here in Connecticut. Before he was in Wasp, we actually played in a band for a minute together. Was on tour with Wasp, and I knew he was coming in off tour from the European tours, coming back to Connecticut, and I asked him if he would play on some of the songs. And he said, sure. It was great to get together with him. He actually played on our Shanghai album, Bombs Away, back in the early 2000s. So we
Right.
recorded together prior to this album, but it's been a long time. So that rhythm section between um, Mike Duda and Matt Starr's magic. And then we had, the missing piece. And the missing piece was the vocals were great, but it wasn't that magical feel that I was looking for. And I kept thinking of a voice that could pull off something of that early years in Sabbath and Dio years. And I knew Andrew Freeman in the
Mm.
back of my mind was the guy for the job, but he was playing with Last in Line. So he was on tour, and I knew there's no way to get him to be able to have the time to do that. Anyway, I sent him tracks. Okay, we kept recording these songs and demoing them, and like didn't hear back from him. Month went by, 2 months went by, 3 months went by, and all of a sudden one day I get a little blip on my email, and it's Andrew saying, "Hey man, I just listened to these songs and I really like them, and yeah, I'd be happy to sing on this the demos you gave me." So it's like the whole heavens parted, because I knew at that time if I could get Andrew on this project and these songs, that it would do the justice that of the genre of the heavy metal godfathers of rock that I grew up with. I wanted to recreate that, my excitement of my youth. And
Yeah.
when Andrew started doing these demos, there was no other person in my mind that could sing these songs better than him. He
Yeah.
just crushed it.
Yeah.
So, so as we did those couple songs first, I said, "Hey, let's get it. Let's do a video." So I was in Connecticut. Matt Starr happened to be on tour. He was doing something in LA. Mike Duda was back in LA, and Andrew was in Vegas. So we converged in LA to a soundstage studio there. We shot two videos, and they came out great. We had a
Yeah.
great time getting together. It was just a whole great atmosphere of, you know, this rock and roll religion, worshiping it together, and Electric Temple was born. And when I
Yeah.
said at the video shoot to Andrew, I said, I'd really love you to finish the album if you could. And he agreed to do that. So
That's
the process took a while because everybody had things going on, prior commitments, but we got it together. It took about a year from start to finish. And then Chris Collier came in, who is an amazing mixer and producer, and he mixed the album for us. He had just come off doing Mick Mars' album. He's also done Korn, Nonpoint, and he remixed the whole Whitesnake top albums recently for David Coverdale. So it was great that he came on board, because he had also worked with Andrew on the Last in Line albums.
oh,
So the sound that I had in my head all perfectly came together.
nice. Yeah, I'd say the production quality is fantastic. Coupled with the prowess of the band. I mean, yeah, it's a perfect marriage right there. And yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, yeah, I mean that rhythm section, it's yeah, it's a thing of beauty, especially, with your soaring guitars on top of that rhythm section, that musical tapestry right there. I mean, it's just brilliant. Yeah, I mean, and I've been a big star of Matt Starr forever. I think he's a phenomenal drummer. And yeah, and Mike Duda, I mean, the guy's a god. So, yeah, and Andrew on there, man, it's like you said. I mean, his vocals, um, yeah, it's sort of reminiscent a little bit of like Jeff Scott Soto to some degree, like that kind of vibe, but definitely the Dio and yeah, that late '80s. I mean, yeah, like you said, it's just that it's exactly what I was looking for. It's like hopefully this can put to bed, Gene Simmons keeps saying the rock and roll is dead. I'm like, well, Gene, go buy this right now, and you will see rock and roll is not dead. It's kicking ass, and it's called Electric Temple. So, yeah,
Yeah,
very cool.
thanks.
I know. So, the fact that you guys are all doing different projects, coming is there a chance of live shows? Is that a possibility with this lineup?
Oh, absolutely. And
Oh,
we're talks with some promoters right now to work out schedules where we could all do it. Um, you know, Mike Duda has got a huge tour he just came off of. He needs a little break, and then he's going to go back on tour. So we don't know if Mike is going to be able to do any of the shows we have planned, and we may have to get somebody else to fill in for him. But as it stands right now, we're trying to work something out where we can all come together and at least play a few gigs together. And we're excited about the album so much that the energy of it we know will translate live, and so we're looking forward to getting that feedback.
Nice, nice, very cool. With a live show, kind of, I mean, maybe this is, cart before the horse, but I mean, kind of what would you do in terms of, you've got, the what, 8 tracks? Would you fill in with like Shanghai stuff or stuff from
Well,
the other bands, or how would you
it's
kind of
eight
approach it?
tracks, but there's almost 38 minutes of it.
Yeah, the true. That's a good point.
It is a long. It is. There are. We didn't cut 2 minute songs.
Yeah,
There's some songs that are mostly in 5 minute range, um, and that is another homage to the genre of those early metal years, where genres you could do and go off and do different things. And I wanted different textures on this album. There's not really one song that sounds the same.
yeah,
We tried to have a lot of different structures and things going on there, and the songs did develop a little bit longer. So that being said, we'd love to do the full album, and then we'll probably throw in just some our guilty pleasure stuff in there, spice it up a little bit. We could always put a quick solo in here or there, but we don't want any filler. We just
okay,
want kick-ass rock and roll.
nice,
And I think probably the slots we're going to do, we're probably going to be allotted maybe 45 minutes anyway.
okay,
So
gotcha.
you know, so I think we'll be fine with the amount of material we have.
Cool. Yeah, yeah, and it's such good material too. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah. Would you be and maybe you're not at liberty to talk about it yet, but yeah, would this be like touring with another band or bands, or do you know kind of what that looks like at this point?
Yeah, I can't. We are having some possibilities going out with um, a legacy band.
Oh,
I don't
nice.
want to. I don't want to say the name, but and then there's always the festivals, which which is
Yeah.
great because you could do a lot of festivals, especially if we get into Europe, because there's like a festival every day of the week. It's,
Right.
I mean, because rock and roll has
Yeah.
never stopped being the main driving force over there. So I love that fact. U.S. We have our weekend festivals, but over there it's like you know
Yeah.
balls to the wall, fucking metal up your
Right.
ass every day of the week.
Yeah.
They're relentless.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be great. That'd be cool. Yeah, I'd love to see, I mean, not that I could get there necessarily, but I would love to see footage of you guys like playing like Vakken or, Bloodstock or something. That would be killer. And I think you guys would fit in so well with that. Wow, that would be great. That would be very cool.
And I love
Um,
all those bands that play on those festivals too. So
oh yeah,
it would be personally great just to be a part of that.
right, right. Do you and again, maybe this is I'm getting way ahead of myself. Do you foresee, a follow-up album? I know this just came out, but do you foresee a follow-up album with this band?
Well, I don't see any reason why not.
Yeah.
The only thing I could say is that scheduling is the biggest issue when things could actually get together. I mean, my creativity comes out, and it seems like right now the faucet is on. So I have so much material um, that I have saved up, ready to go, and
Nice.
so I that won't be the problem. The problem will be is just scheduling right now and seeing, because
Yeah.
these guys are, obviously have a nice career path already going for them, and this is a nice project that we put together that we don't know where it's going to go, but right now we're just open to anything and we're just having fun.
Nice. Yeah, that's perfect. That is perfect. Um, Circle back a little bit to you were talking about the writing, like when you started writing this. So, obviously it's, probably starts with a riff. Um, did you write all the lyrics, or was that Andrew? Did he write the lyrics? Or kind of what was that process like?
Yeah, Andrew did help on a few of the songs. Basically, the demos had all the lyrics and melodies
Hmm.
pretty much done with other vocalists, and so there was a lot of structured stuff for him to take and make it his own. And so what he did was what I call Andrewified it. He
Hmm.
took what was there and just blew it up into something that was so fantastically great that there was there's not, you got to listen to the album. I mean, his
Yeah.
vocals are just amazing. So I think to answer your question, most of the album was written prior to him coming on board and singing it. But when he did get in the studio with these songs, he knew exactly emotionally where I was coming from. Something that's very difficult for people to connect with somebody else who's basically written a song. But
Yeah.
he was able to get into where my headspace was and get out exactly what I was feeling. And emotionally, his approach to it and his delivery on the album was spot on. When I hear this album, all I do is smile
Yeah, me too.
because
Me too.
because he fucking nailed it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, you look at like, I mean, every song is amazing, but you look at like Worlds on Fire, the harmonies, the vocal harmonies in that song. I mean, that's like like butter. It's like butter. Just, just
Yeah,
melt. I mean, it's
yeah.
it's so smooth and creamy and perfect.
Well, he's got one of those voices where he could sing a telephone book and make it sound good.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I can't give him enough credit for making this album a success. He he was the special ingredient that glued it all together. I'm so yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Andrews rocks.
Yeah. 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 Like you said, yeah, he does. And I mean the whole band, I mean everything. Yeah, that's the thing I love about this album too is like I mean, you guys come out swinging. Like Death Wish just comes out like it's relentless. It's so cool. And like, and every song, like that's what I liked what you said that, every song has a different vibe and a different feel. I mean, you can tell it's the same band, but yeah, it just speaks to all of that stuff I loved so much back then and still do today. What kind of like what you said, like what got me into this in the first place. And yeah, each song I can hear certain passages or certain there's a certain vibe, and sometimes it's kind of hard to put a finger on it where it doesn't necessarily remind me of another band, but it just reminds me of just that time and high school and just the power of the music itself. And yeah, like you said, I mean it puts a smile on my face. It's not to say there aren't, there's some darker lyrics, but it's a very uplifting album, which I love. And I think that was what we were missing for so long, especially in the 90s, which was such a drag, in the late 90s where and there was some really good music that came out at that time, but I just got so sick of listening to people's therapy sessions on albums. It's like I want something that's fun, and that's what this is. It's just it's a fun album that it's driving rock and roll. It's exactly what, yeah. Sorry, I'm rambling now, but I'm
Well, yeah,
thrilled
you're
by
you're, you're
this.
exactly right. And getting back to talking about some of the influences that I had growing up, I mean, let's just talk about the Blizzard of Oz first album with Randy.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, there was a darkness, but there was a energy, attitude.
yeah,
And the subject matters. There were some serious subject matters, and then there was other subject that the genres that we listened to back then. You could have Goodbye to Romance on an album. Then you could have No Bone Movies. And then you could have Suicide Solution. Just to bring up that album, there was a continuity still there, but very different, textures of the
yeah,
songs. but it all tied together. And that's what I was aiming for, is trying to to have that kind of different textures come together, but yet a central kind of sound that would be unique to us.
Nice. Yeah, and you nailed it. You totally did that. Yeah, I think you
Thanks.
totally did that.
That was the
Um,
intention.
so speaking of influences in early days, if you don't mind, let's take a ride in the Wayback Machine. How did you get started in all of this in the first place? Like, did you come from a musical family? Like, what was the impetus for Tony to become a musician?
Yeah, well, my mother was a piano player.
Hmm.
She wasn't like a professional, but there was, she would sight read and play piano, and she was very good. And so I grew up with a lot of music through her. I do have a cousin who was in a band called Bones. He's like a second cousin, and that was like an early MTV band who was like, it was like a punk new wave kind of rock sound back then. And I remember him giving one of his tapes, and me going over to the house there and seeing his Marshalls and his guitars, and then he had a tank full of tarantulas and snakes, and I was like, I love this. This is cool. It was like the marriage of imagery with the music turned me
Yeah.
on, and I gravitated to something that was a little bit out of the norm, So, um, but for us as metal fans, we tended to, you know, like black clothing a lot. We
Yeah.
we had our own unique kind of style and look that, in back then, if you wanted to find another musician, it was easy. The guy with the long hair and the black t-shirt with a band on it,
Yeah.
you go to him, you play. So growing up, we started hanging out with friends of like-minded, and we, even if we didn't play an instrument, we like the same music, and then we go, hey, can you play? Yeah, my brother's got a keyboard. Okay, great, bring it over. I got a bunch of drums that my uncle used to have up in the attic. Okay, pull them out. So, as a kid, when you're 11, 12, 13 years old, we used to have these mishmash kits of stuff, and we just jam in our basement and listen to the radio every day, and wait for that one song that we liked on the radio with the blank cassette tape and try to grab it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, because having not a lot of money as a kid, you try to get your music as much as you can, and that's
Right.
why mixtapes were so valuable back then, because you'd exchange stuff to everybody.
Yeah, it's
you
funny you
know
bring that up. I was just telling my kids who are in their 20s about, yeah, trying to capture songs off the radio. And yeah, and it seemed like more often than not, my mom would like walk in the room and say something like, "God damn it, mom." And I'd have to stop because I'm actually recording it with a tape player next to the radio, like one of those old black
exactly.
tape recorders.
Right.
Yeah. So sorry, I didn't mean to
And
interrupt you, but that
no,
just
no, no.
triggered a memory.
Yeah, no, it's a great memory. And if you remember that, at the time, the record companies were getting really pissed off. They wanted to surcharge on blank tapes an extra money that would kick back to them,
Yeah.
because the blank tapes were, oh my God, we're going to lose revenue. People are
Yeah.
taping our, because before that it was just albums.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those blank cassette tapes were the scourge. And that's why it was so important for us to try to to show our friends something new that came across, because we didn't have MTV.
Yeah.
you know we had our local rock station, and they had a format which was cool, because back then most rock stations had a lot of different sound on the radio. You'd have Pink Floyd, and then you'd play Leonard Skinner song, then you'd play a Black Sabbath song, then you'd have a Alice Cooper song, and then you'd have like maybe a Pat Benatar song. So you had all these different influences that were hitting you as a young kid, absorbing all this.
Yeah.
But for me, what resonated with me is when I heard Malcolm Young hit a power chord and then
Nice.
have Angus do a solo over it, or Ronnie James Dio sing in the stratosphere over Tony Iommi's, real guttural low power chord, and then what he could do vocally. The melody was so important to me too, of all those bands too. What they did with the heavy guitars. So yeah, that was where you can have Blue Oyster Cult come out with like these weird concept albums, and it was then they would come out with something like Don't Fear the Reaper or Godzilla. It was the boundaries were wide open back then.
Yeah.
Artists could really branch out. They weren't pigeonholed today like I feel they are. So I applaud any band that can break out of their pigeonhole and do something different. And I gotta say, Avenged Sevenfold is one of those bands that
Mm.
has a lot of experiments of different textures and stuff, and it's great to grow and see them as a band who appreciated the same music we were talking about back then, advance and do different things with it. So,
Yeah.
I love the fact that the even the youth right now can take what we listened to back then and take it, have a new take on it and keep it fresh.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I agree. Do you did you always gravitate to the guitar, or was that kind
I
of like,
started playing piano because my
oh,
mother
okay.
played piano, and I fucking hated it. The guy would come over, and he was this old guy, and he was very rigid, and he was like, blah, 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 blah. And I just, I just said, I want to play guitar. So I bought a Beatles songbook, and I started trying to, I had an acoustic guitar that my cousin bought me for Christmas, and I
Nice.
started trying to learn that, and then eventually I started taking um, formal guitar lessons,
Oh, okay.
which didn't last that long because Van Halen was something that not many people were able to teach you. So
Right.
that's so basically, that that got woodshedded, and next thing I know, I'm just listening to Ozzy, Sabbath, Rush, anything I get my hands on that had really great guitar, Van Halen, and trying to learn all those licks. The trick was back then you put a couple pennies on the top of the needle on or and try to slow it down so you
Yeah.
can try to pick up some licks because you didn't have the very speed tape recorders, or so the people that had them were lucky. But so yeah, I mean, it was great. It developed your ear. You'd play with other guitar players. That was the great thing too. You get together with our kids in the neighborhood, and one kid could figure out one part, maybe you could figure out the other part, or you were playing it wrong, and he's like, "Hey, try it playing this way," and the light bulb went off. Like, okay, cool,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So that's where it all began. The excitement of trying to recreate and being fans of these great bands that we were able to witness live. Like, I'm so happy I got to see Randy Rose live, New Haven
Yeah.
Coliseum on the Blizzard of Oz tour. Seeing Def Leppard early on and on that tour too with them on the High and Dry tour. I witnessed some incredible, you know, musicianship and concerts back in the day that you know nobody can you have video, but not many of Randy. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
actually be there and see him play live was just an amazing experience. And then I used to sleep out all the time for any Van Halen concert that came into town, so I could get as close to see Eddie play.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that I mean that was my life. My life was music, and that's what this album really is about. Is um, the recreation of my youth when that magic time when music was so religion to me. It's more religious than I could ever find any, you know, mainstream religion to me.
Yeah.
That was that something that hit me in a certain way and made me feel in a certain way and made me feel that I could do anything. Anything is possible. and there's nothing that I can't do with that music in my life.
Nice.
It was
Well said.
definitely a religious experience, and that's what Electric Temple basically tried to recreate on this album. Something that gave us that excitement and feeling that we had in our youth with those bands that I just mentioned.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it's, I
And I
think,
got to say, Judas Priest too.
oh yeah,
Judas Priest
Priest.
was a
I love
big
the Priest.
another band that was uh, another band who also had freedom in the early albums to experiment and find different things that until you got to the 80s when then it was solidified. Okay, this is
Yeah.
where we're going with it. And you had some great albums come out after that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that like all the bands you're saying, all the bands you're bringing up, and you can see it, I think, or hear it more so, in your guitar tone. You have such a rich guitar tone, and especially on this album. I mean, your guitar tone is really sweet. It's, I mean, and it, yeah, and it's kind of reminiscent. It has this classic rock sound to it, but I mean, but it's still very fresh and new too. But it, yeah, there's elements that remind me of certain like little passages here and there, little, where I'm like, oh, that has kind of a little Judas Priest vibe to it, or something. And it's really cool. It's really cool that, yeah, and because I
and
mean,
and it's just what's coming out, and all those influences you can't shake.
hmm
Those are the things that you love. If you love something and you have a passion for it, you absorb all these things, and hopefully you put a new spin on it, take, and you try to give it your own personal imprint. But yeah, there's so many textures that you could point out and say, oh, I hear that or that, and that's fine, because there's nothing wrong with that in my book.
yeah, yeah. Was there was there like a particular time, a moment where you decided, and I know a lot of teenagers probably say this, but was there a defining moment for you when you're like, I'm going to do this for a living?
It's a good question. I was blessed early on to know what I wanted to do. When I went to, and it's not really a heavy band, but in 1979, I went to New Haven Coliseum again because I'm from Connecticut. That was the big place to go, and I saw Cheap Trick on the Dream Police tour,
Oh, nice.
and they had this big eyeball that came out, and big beams of light coming out of the eyeball hitting you, and that arena rock, everybody going crazy and hearing those hits they had back then, and then Rick Nielsen coming out with these cool guitars and his cool demeanor, and just it was just like, I want to do that. That Rick Nielsen had everything. He had the showmanship, he had the playing, he had great songwriting.
Yeah.
The songs that he wrote with Ram Zinner. So, it became right early on something that I was like, okay, I have to figure out how to to get on stage and do what he's doing, because he's having such a fucking great time. I
Yeah.
know he's having the time of his life, throwing those picks out, and running around with all these cool guitars. And I was like, man, I love that.
Yeah.
So that whole arena rock bug bit me right then. And then it translates to a lot of bands that around that time that were around, that when you went to a live show, which, unfortunately, the kids today don't get that certain vibe, I don't think, as much as a festival as when a band came into town in a coliseum.
Yeah.
And that was a special moment when everybody's confined in this area. You had 10, 11,000 people, just getting that energy out
Yeah.
and it was such a cool religious experience. You're experiencing it together, and that's the whole thing that said to me, I want to be a part of this. So
Nice.
that was the start.
Cool.
That Cheap
Very
Trick
cool.
concert was the
Awesome.
groundwork that changed whatever endorphins or neural pathways in my brain that changed forever.
Awesome. That's great. I love Cheap Trick. That's so cool that that was the band that like yeah, like really kind of kicked it in for you.
And I'm going to say now when Shanghai came out, we had an album out in Japan that did very well at the time. And in the liner notes, they asked me my influences. I had a whole blurb about how Rick Nielsen was so important to me.
Hmm.
To find out that James Christian from the House of Lords, who produced that album with Jeff Kanata engineering, two great mentors of mine who actually are Connecticut natives also.
Oh, nice.
Um, he was managed by the same management company that was managing Cheap Trick, and I
Oh,
became friends with the management. And they would, every time Cheap Trick got in town, I would be able to get backstage. And
oh.
when I met Rick Nielsen for the first time, I was like, a fanboy with my CD going, Rick, I want you to see what I wrote about you. This is how big an influence you were on mine. I had to put it in the liner notes, and
Awesome.
so I got to show him that, and
Nice.
that for me was like coming full circle.
That is very cool. Oh, that's a great story. That's awesome. That's really cool. I love that. Speaking of Shanghai, how did that come about? How what was the formation of Shanghai like? Because you were fairly young at the time, right? That was because the
Yeah,
first
yeah,
album
we
was what,
were,
89?
yeah, we were young, dumb, and full of you know what, and it was all it was all about friendship for me. Jody Reese, who was the bass player and founding member with me in that band, we had been in an earlier formation of a band. Jody was the lead singer of a band called Rocks Hard, and we came together. And he was a fantastic musician. He could play. He's classically trained at 4 years old to play piano, but he wanted to be a bass player, and he picked up that bass guitar, and it was like it was born with it. And we started writing songs together, and we got Ron Kramer, who's an incredible drummer. Now he's a composer, and does uh, he's actually a writer.
Oh wow.
Has had Amazon bestsellers, and writes books, and he has a new whole other thing coming out right now with Phil X, and Greg Bizinet, and
Oh wow.
Tony Franklin. So check out Ron Kramer, but he doesn't play drums anymore. He just writes songs,
Oh,
um, and he plays piano. But getting back to Shanghai, so we had another singer. James Christian came in from a House of Lords tour. We had seen him at Toad's place, and we had talked to him, and our management company wanted him to produce us over a Christmas break. And so real quickly, he said, "Okay, let's get together. I want to see you guys live." So he came out and saw us live, and he said, "Man, I really like the songs. I like the band, but the singer's got to go."
oh,
So, and we had studio time booked.
oh wow.
So Ron's girlfriend was from Massachusetts, and we got a clue that there was this great singer in Massachusetts that she'd seen on the local circuit. His name was Jade, and we didn't know exactly where he lived, but we knew kind of the proximate area, and we just went up. He drove up there one day and on a search to try to hunt this guy down. Believe it or not,
Wow.
that's how you did things there because there were no cell phones, there was no internet, really.
Yeah.
So you had to physically find somebody, and believe it or not, somehow they found where he lived. I wasn't there. Ron, the drummer, was, and knocked on his door and said, "Hey, blah 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 blah. We got this. James Christian produces blah 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 blah. Can you come and sing for us?" And he's like, "Who are you? What do you want?" You know.
Yeah.
So we said, "Okay, listen, we'll pay you $500." He's like, "Okay, I'll do it." And we never paid him. That's the funny thing about it.
Oh jeez.
But anyway, it worked out great. He is a fantastic job on our albums, and we co-wrote songs with him, and we
Yeah.
got our songs in a lot of film and television, and that's what got me into that genre of working on film and television
Ah,
stuff
okay.
over the years because our management company, uh, Judith Randall, was a well-known lyricist, and her daughter and her wrote songs, and they were great songwriters. And they had her brother produced Baywatch, and they had Hollywood Connections. Her father used to write for I Love Lucy, so they had the
Oh,
whole
wow.
Hollywood film and television thing, connections. And that because of that, we started getting into like a Dennis Hopper movie, Drew
Yeah.
Barrymore, um, the Amy Fisher story with Drew Barrymore, ABC movie that we, and it just snowballed for that.
Right.
We started doing things like that. So our songs still live today in recent shows. We're still milking those albums, but
Nice.
we haven't been together. Jade and I did a 2017 benefit show for the station for the fire that happened there in Rhode Island,
Oh,
and that
oh,
was the
nice.
last time we were on stage together.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, we still try to keep in touch with fans, and the Shanghai stuff still does well. I don't know, people people still find seek us out, and I go on eBay sometimes. I see some of our EPs going for a ridiculous amount of money, so people are willing to pay for it. So they must
Yeah,
have
I
liked
think
something about it.
I think Take Another Bite, like right now, I think on Amazon it's like 250 bucks for a vinyl copy of that. Yeah, it's like, and it's such a great album. It's very cohesive. It's fun to listen to. I mean, Please Me, Tease Me is just, that's a classic. I mean, that heavy rotation on MTV. I remember that back then. And yeah, I think that's the song that's in the Drew Barrymore show, right? If I remember correctly. Is it?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's when Amy Buttafuoco goes up and Amy Fisher goes up to the door, and she gets this friend of hers to drive her in the Camaro, and he's sitting in the Camaro. He changes the station, and you hear "Please Me, Tease Me." She's going up there and shoots Mary Buttafuoco. So
That's right. Yeah. I forgot about that. I haven't seen that show
and
since
he
probably it
peels
was on.
off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's a killer song, killer album. Yeah, very cool. And yeah, that's cool that I was curious about how you got into the Hollywood scene. That makes sense, the that with those connections like that. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Victor. I have somebody calling me in the background. They don't realize that I'm on an interview right now, but that's okay.
Um well, Tony, this has been awesome chatting with you. Yeah, and congratulations on the album. I mean,
Thank you.
it's just fire. It is really fire. And so, yeah, for those of you watching, you can get this right now on Eonian Records, I believe, right? EonianRecords.com. You can order this. You can stream it, but you should buy a physical copy. Um, and
Yeah,
yeah,
they
and
did a
you won't
really
be
nice.
sorry.
Yeah, they did a really nice job with the packaging on
Yeah,
the
yeah,
CD.
really cool packaging. Yeah, I love the artwork. Yeah, it's just such a stellar album. And yeah, definitely. I mean, I know it just came out, but it's definitely one of my top 10 for this year for sure. I mean, I can't not stop listening to this I mean, I've listened to it twice today. So, yeah, and I was blasting it last night. So,
And to echo, thank you. I appreciate that so much. And a lot of people have been giving me the same feedback. This album is really growing on me. The more I listen to it, it's just one of those things where it reminds me of what happened to me as a kid. You start going for the deeper cuts. Okay, you get
yeah,
attracted to this, and then like $1 Billion Babies, and then I was like, what is this song? Raped and Freezing. There's like, there's a whole different other things going on here, but you
yeah,
get sucked in, and then you start going, okay, and then pretty soon, you know, No More Mr. Nice Guy is not the song that you know,
right.
is your favorite song on it. So I like to get the feedback of people telling me, "Oh, I really like this song." And I'm like, "Oh, great," because that's totally different than somebody else told me. So I
Yeah.
love the fact that everybody can find something on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, if you were to ask me, like, as I'm listening to it, like, yeah, what's your favorite song? Like, oh, it's Death Wish. No, now it's Doom. Like as the next song comes on, I'm like, no, this is my favorite song. No, this is my favorite song. Like the whole album is it's just perfect. It's such a perfect album. I'm in love with it. I can't stop listening to it. So yeah, so those of you watching, check this out and keep an eye out. Hopefully we'll see some live shows coming up in the not too distant future from Electric Temple, which I'm hoping you'll come to my neck of the woods out here in Utah, because I would be so happy to see you guys live. Um, but yeah, Tony, thank you so very much for chatting with me today. I really appreciate it. This has been
Thank you, Victor, for
yeah,
having me on and talking about the music we love so much, and this is an homage to that. And appreciate you pushing it, because
Yeah.
high voltage salvation really is an important thing for me soul wise, and hopefully other people can get into it and get the same experience that I'm trying to convey.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Same to you. Thanks, Victor.